The stars above Illyria shimmered like scattered diamonds, casting a faint, ethereal glow across the landscape of the alien world. Captain Marcus Albright stood at the viewport of his small diplomatic shuttle, his eyes tracing the distant outlines of Illyria's twin moons as they orbited in perfect synchrony. The planet itself, a lush orb of deep greens and blues, hung in the void, exuding a serene beauty that belied the tense circumstances surrounding his mission. Marcus was a man of war, but not of violence. He had spent his career navigating the fine line between conflict and diplomacy, earning a reputation as a soldier who preferred words over weapons. This mission to Illyria, however, had tested his skills in ways he had never anticipated. The Illyrians were an ancient and enigmatic species, fiercely protective of their traditions and suspicious of outsiders. His role as Earth's envoy was to bridge the gap between their worlds, to establish the foundations for peace and mutual respect. Yet, despite his best efforts, something had gone terribly wrong. As the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Marcus replayed the events of the past few days in his mind, searching for the moment when the mission had begun to unravel. It had all seemed so straightforward, a diplomatic gesture, a small ceremony meant to honor the Illyrians' customs. But what had been intended as a gesture of goodwill had been perceived as an unforgivable transgression. The shuttle touched down softly on a landing platform made of smooth, reflective stone. Around him, the capital city of Illyria, Velia, stretched out in all directions, its towering spires and intricate architecture a testament to the planet's advanced civilization. The buildings were woven from living material, organic structures that pulsed with a soft, inner light, giving the city an otherworldly appearance. But there was no time to admire the scenery. He had been summoned to face the Council of Matriarchs, the ruling body of Illyria, and the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on him. As the shuttle's ramp lowered, a contingent of Illyrian guards awaited him at the base, their imposing figures clad in armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. They were all female, as was the custom on Illyria, where the matriarchal society placed women in all positions of power and influence. The guards' expressions were unreadable, their large, luminous eyes reflecting the pale light of the moons. Without a word, they escorted Marcus through the city streets, which were unusually quiet, as if the entire population held its breath in anticipation of what was to come. They arrived at the Hall of the Matriarchs, a grand structure carved into the side of a mountain, its entrance flanked by massive statues of Illyrian women, each representing one of the revered ancestors who had shaped their civilization. The hall itself was a marvel of Illyrian craftsmanship, with soaring ceilings that seemed to touch the sky and walls adorned with intricate carvings depicting scenes from Illyrian mythology and history. A sense of ancient power and wisdom permeated the air, making Marcus feel small and insignificant in comparison. The guards led him into the central chamber, a vast circular room dominated by a raised platform where the Council of Matriarchs sat. There were 12 of them, each representing a different clan and aspect of Illyrian life. High Matriarch Lysara of the Clan of the Moon, whose eyes were said to see into the souls of those who stood before her. Matriarch Alana of the Clan of War, a warrior of unparalleled skill and strategy. Matriarch Seraphine of the Clan of Wisdom, who was said to possess knowledge of all that had come before and all that would be. These were just a few of the powerful women who now held Marcus's fate in their hands. At the center of the platform stood a single ornate chair made of a dark, lustrous wood. This was the seat of the judicator, the matriarch who would lead the proceedings and ultimately deliver the verdict. Today that role fell to High Matriarch Lysara, a figure of both elegance and severity. Her long, silver hair flowed like a river down her back, and her deep-set eyes, as dark as the void between stars, seemed to pierce through Marcus as he approached. "Captain Marcus Albright of Earth," she intoned, her voice resonating through the chamber with a power that sent a shiver down his spine. "You stand accused of violating one of our most sacred traditions, a transgression that has shaken the very foundations of our society. Do you understand the gravity of your actions?" Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "High Matriarch Lysara, esteemed members of the council," he began, his voice steady but laced with the tension he felt. "I acknowledge that I have made a grave error, but it was unintentional. I ask for your understanding, and I offer my deepest apologies to the Illyrian people." His words hung in the air, but the matriarchs remained silent, their expressions inscrutable. High Matriarch Lysara tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as she considered his plea. "Intent does not absolve the consequences of your actions," she said finally, her tone cold and unyielding. The rite of continuity is the very essence of our culture, a ritual passed down through countless generations. It is not merely a ceremony, it is the lifeblood of our people. By your interference, you have disrupted a cycle that has remained unbroken for millennia. Marcus felt a surge of frustration, but he kept it in check. I acted out of ignorance, not malice, he replied. I was unaware of the significance of the ritual. Had I known, I would never have. Enough, Matriarch Ilana interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. Your ignorance is no excuse. You were briefed on our customs before your arrival, were you not? I was, Marcus admitted, his gaze dropping to the floor. But the briefing was incomplete. It did not mention the specific timing or the details of the ritual in question. Matriarch Seraphine, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. And what exactly did you do, Captain Albright, she asked, her voice softer, more inquisitive than the others. We would hear your account of the events that led to this situation. Marcus took a deep breath, steeling himself as he recounted the incident. It was during a diplomatic visit to the Temple of the Ancestors, he began. I was invited by the priestesses to observe a ceremony, one that I believed was a common practice of honor and remembrance. As the ceremony proceeded, I noticed that the participants were performing what appeared to be a blessing. I wanted to show my respect. So I stepped forward and offered a token of goodwill, an artifact from Earth, something I thought would be seen as a gesture of friendship. He paused, recalling the moment in vivid detail. But as soon as I did, the atmosphere in the temple changed. The priestesses reacted with horror, and the participants, young Illyrian females I later learned, were pulled away from the ritual in panic. It was only later that I realized my action had been interpreted as a desecration. The chamber was silent for a long moment after Marcus finished speaking. The matriarchs exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. High Matriarch Lysara spoke first, her voice tinged with an emotion that Marcus could not quite place. The artifact you offered, what was it? A symbol of peace, Marcus said, his voice quieter now. A small sculpture of two hands clasped together, an ancient earth symbol for unity and understanding. Lysara closed her eyes, as if in deep thought, before she opened them again and fixed Marcus with a piercing stare. Captain Albright, what you did was more than a mere interruption. The rite of continuity is not just a ceremony of blessing, it is a ritual of passage, marking the transition of our young females into adulthood. By stepping into that sacred space, you disrupted their journey, their transformation. The artifact you offered, though well-intentioned, was seen as an alien influence on a process that is meant to be purely Illyrian. Marcus felt a wave of despair wash over him. He had not only misunderstood the situation, but he had also inadvertently tainted a pivotal moment in the lives of those young women. I had no idea, he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Indeed, you did not, Matriarch Ilana said, her voice softer now, though still stern. But the damage has been done. The question before us is how to rectify this breach, how to restore the balance you have disturbed. The matriarchs conferred quietly among themselves, their voices too low for Marcus to hear. He stood in the center of the chamber, feeling more isolated and vulnerable than he ever had in his life. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly, each second a heavy weight pressing down on him. Finally, High Matriarch Lysara rose from her seat, signaling the end of their deliberations. She looked down at Marcus, her expression grave. Captain Marcus Albright. She began, her voice solemn, you have been found guilty of violating the sanctity of one of our most sacred traditions. The punishment for such a crime is not one we impose lightly, but it is necessary to restore the harmony you have disrupted. Marcus swallowed hard, bracing himself for what was to come. Under Illyrian law. Lysara continued, the punishment for your transgression is that you must participate in the mating ceremony with the newly adult females whose rite you disrupted. This ceremony is one of the most profound aspects of our culture, and by undergoing it, you will be integrated into our society in a way that cannot be undone. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had heard of the mating ceremony, of course every envoy to Illyria was briefed on the planet's customs, but he had never imagined he would be forced to participate in it. The ceremony was a deeply personal and spiritual ritual, one that involved a level of intimacy he had never thought he would experience, especially with an alien species. You cannot be serious, Marcus said, his voice barely steady. This is not justice. It's... "It is our way," matriarch Seraphine said, her tone gentle but firm. "You disrupted their passage into adulthood. Now you must complete it with them. This is how balance is restored." Marcus's mind raced as he tried to comprehend the full implications of what was being demanded of him. The mating ceremony was not just a physical act, it was a binding ritual that would forever tie him to Illyrian society. He would be marked, not just as a participant, but as someone who had been integrated into their culture in the most profound way possible. And yet he realized with a sinking heart he had no choice. Refusal was not an option. To deny their sentence would be to dishonor the Illyrians even further, and potentially spark an interplanetary incident that could destroy the fragile peace between their worlds. I understand," Marcus finally said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I will do what is required of me." The matriarchs nodded in unison, their expressions softening slightly as they acknowledged his acceptance. High Matriarch Lysara stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You have made the right choice," she said quietly. "This will not be easy, but it is necessary. Through this ritual, you will come to understand our ways as no outsider ever has, and in turn we will learn from you. There is much at stake, Captain Albright, but there is also much to be gained." With those final words, the session was adjourned. Marcus was led out of the chamber by the Illyrian guards, his mind a storm of conflicting emotions. As he was escorted through the city's winding streets, the reality of his situation began to sink in. He was no longer just an envoy from Earth, he was now a part of Illyria, bound to its people by the most intimate of rituals. The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The capital city of Veliasen hummed with a quiet energy, a living pulse that resonated through its organic structures and deep-rooted traditions. As Marcus was led through the city, he could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, the sense that every stone, every leaf, and every breath of air was infused with the memories of a civilization far older than his own. It was as though the city itself was alive, a sentient being that watched and judged him as he walked its streets. The Illyrian guards flanked him on either side, their fluid, almost graceful movements belying their strength and discipline. They guided him along a path that wound through the heart of Veliasen, passing beneath arches woven from living vines and through plazas where ancient trees stretched their branches skyward, their leaves whispering secrets in the wind. The city was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, a harmonious blend of nature and technology, where every structure seemed to grow organically from the earth, yet shimmered with the soft glow of advanced energy sources. As they walked, Marcus couldn't help but notice the Illyrians who watched him from a distance. Their eyes, large and luminous, reflected a mixture of curiosity, caution, and something deeper, more profound. It was as if they were trying to see into his very soul, to understand the alien presence that had suddenly become a part of their world. Their skin, a pale, iridescent hue, glimmered under the light of the twin moons, giving them an otherworldly appearance that only added to the sense of being in a place completely foreign to human understanding. Eventually, the guards brought Marcus to a large, sprawling structure at the city's center, its walls adorned with intricate carvings and symbols that seemed to pulse with life. This was the sanctum of the ancestors, one of the most sacred places in Illyrian society. Here the Illyrians came to commune with the spirits of their forebears, to seek guidance and wisdom from those who had come before. It was a place of reverence, of deep spiritual significance, and Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as he crossed its threshold. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of incense and the sound of soft chanting. The walls were lined with altars, each dedicated to a different ancestor, their likenesses carved into the stone with painstaking detail. Illyrian priestesses moved gracefully through the sanctum, their movements a dance of devotion as they tended to the altars and offered prayers. Their robes, made of a material that seemed to flow like water, shimmered in the dim light, and their eyes, half closed in meditation, glowed with an inner light that spoke of their deep connection to the spiritual realm. Marcus was led to a small chamber at the rear of the sanctum, where he was instructed to wait. The chamber was sparse, furnished only with a low bench and a small table upon which rested a single candle, its flame flickering gently. The walls were adorned with more carvings, these depicting scenes of Illyrian life, birth, growth, death, and rebirth, the endless cycle that the Illyrians believed governed all existence. He was alone now, the guards having left him to await the arrival of his next guide. Marcus sat on the bench, his thoughts swirling as he tried to process everything that had happened. The words of the matriarchs echoed in his mind, their voices carrying the weight of an entire civilization's expectations. The mating ceremony loomed large in his thoughts, its implications both terrifying and enigmatic. He knew so little about Illyrian culture, and yet he was about to be thrust into one of its most intimate and sacred rituals. As he waited, Marcus found his gaze drawn to the carvings on the walls. They were beautiful, intricate depictions of Illyrian life, each telling a story of its own. One carving in particular caught his attention, a scene of a young Illyrian female standing at the edge of a vast forest, her arms raised toward the sky. Around her, the trees seemed to bend and sway in response, as if acknowledging her presence. There was something serene, yet powerful, about the image, a sense of connection between the female and the natural world that Marcus found both mesmerizing and unsettling. Before he could ponder the carving further, the door to the chamber opened, and a figure stepped inside. She was tall, even by Illyrian standards, with skin that glowed a soft, silvery blue. Her hair, long and flowing, was the color of moonlight, and her eyes, large and almond-shaped, shimmered with a light that seemed to come from within. She moved with a grace that was almost hypnotic, her every step a dance that drew Marcus's full attention. "Captain Albright," she said, her voice like a melody, smooth and resonant, "I am Priestess Orinia of the Clan of the Moon. I have been sent to prepare you for the journey ahead." Marcus stood, feeling a mixture of apprehension and respect. "Thank you, Priestess," he said, inclining his head slightly in a gesture of deference. "I am honored by your presence." Orinia smiled, a gesture that was warm but tinged with sadness. "The honor is ours, Captain. You have been chosen to partake in a ritual that is central to our existence. But I understand that this is not your choice, and for that I am truly sorry. However, it is important that you understand why this ritual is so vital to us." She gestured for him to sit, and Marcus complied, his curiosity piqued. Orinia took a seat opposite him, her gaze never leaving his. "Our people," she began, "are bound by traditions that stretch back to the dawn of our civilization. The right of continuity, which you unwittingly interrupted, is the cornerstone of those traditions. It is through this right that our young females transition into adulthood, becoming full members of our society and connecting with the spirits of our ancestors. It is a sacred process, one that cannot be taken lightly." Marcus nodded, his earlier frustration giving way to a deep sense of responsibility. "I understand now," he said quietly. "I didn't realize the significance of the ritual. I was only trying to show respect, but I see that I have caused great harm instead." Orinia reached out and placed a hand on his, her touch cool and calming. "It is not entirely your fault, Captain. We did not fully explain our customs to you, and for that we bear some responsibility. But now, you must help us restore the balance that has been disrupted." She paused, as if considering her next words carefully. "The mating ceremony," she continued, "is not merely a physical act. It is a profound spiritual bond, one that ties the participants to each other and to our people as a whole. Through this ceremony you will become a part of us, connected to Illyria in a way that is both beautiful and irrevocable." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What exactly does that mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Orinia's eyes softened with compassion. "It means that you will share in our memories, our emotions, our very essence. The young females you will join with have been prepared for this moment their entire lives. They are the future of our people, and by participating in this ceremony, you will help ensure the continuity of our culture and our connection to the ancestors." Marcus tried to process what she was saying, but it felt overwhelming, like trying to grasp the full weight of an entire world in the palm of his hand. "And what about me?" he asked. "What will happen to me?" "You will be changed," Orinia said simply. "But how you are changed depends on you. The ceremony is a mutual exchange, a merging of your essence with ours. It will be a challenge, one that will test your strength and your resolve. But it is also an opportunity, Captain, an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to understand us in a way that no other outsider ever has." Marcus looked down at his hands, his thoughts a chaotic tangle of fear, doubt, and a strange sense of anticipation. "And if I refuse?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Orinia's expression grew somber. "To refuse would be to dishonor the very essence of what we are. It would be seen as a rejection of our people, and it could have grave consequences for the relationship between Illyria and Earth. But more than that, it would mean that the disruption you caused would remain unresolved. A wound that could fester and grow over time. Marcus closed his eyes, taking a deep breath as he tried to find his center. This was more than he had ever bargained for when he accepted the mission to Illyria. The idea of participating in a ritual so alien, so deeply intimate, was both terrifying and humbling. Yet, as much as he wanted to resist, to cling to the familiar values and norms of his own world, he knew that he couldn't. Not if he wanted to truly understand this place, and not if he wanted to help mend the rift he had unintentionally created. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "No one ever is," Arinya replied softly, "but readiness is not always necessary. Sometimes it is enough to be willing. The rest will follow." There was a long silence as Marcus weighed her words, the gravity of the situation pressing down on him from all sides. Finally he opened his eyes and met Arinya's gaze, finding in it a depth of understanding that eased some of the fear gnawing at his heart. "I'll do it," he said, the decision settling over him like a heavy mantle. "I'll participate in the ceremony." Arinya's smile returned, this time warmer, more genuine. "Thank you, Captain. Your willingness to embrace this challenge speaks to the strength of your spirit. There is much you will learn in the days to come, and much that you will teach us as well." She stood, and Marcus followed suit. "Come," she said, gesturing toward the door. "There is someone I want you to meet." They left the small chamber and moved deeper into the sanctum, the air growing cooler and more still as they descended a winding staircase into the lower levels of the structure. Here the walls were lined with more carvings, but these were different, less about daily life, and more focused on the spiritual and mystical aspects of Illyrian existence. The scenes depicted beings of light and shadow, vast landscapes filled with ethereal creatures, and figures that seemed to move between worlds, their forms shifting and blending with the environment around them. "This is the Hall of Memories," Arinya explained as they walked. "It is where we come to connect with the collective consciousness of our ancestors. Each carving represents a memory, a moment in time that has been preserved and passed down through the generations. By touching these carvings, we can experience these memories firsthand, reliving the past as if it were our own." Marcus marveled at the idea. The concept of a collective memory, shared and experienced by an entire people, was something beyond anything Earth had ever achieved. It was a form of immortality, a way for the Illyrians to keep their history alive in a very literal sense. They reached the end of the hall, where a large double door stood, its surface covered in a complex pattern of symbols and images that seemed to shift and change as Marcus looked at them. Arinya placed a hand on the door, and it opened silently, revealing a spacious chamber bathed in a soft, golden light. Inside, a group of young Illyrian females stood in a loose circle, their heads bowed in concentration. They were dressed in flowing robes of white and silver, their hair adorned with delicate vines and flowers. As Marcus and Arinya entered, they looked up, their eyes glowing with the same inner light that Marcus had seen in the priestesses. "These are the ones who will join you in the mating ceremony," Arinya said, her voice reverent. "They have been preparing for this moment their entire lives, but like you, they are facing the unknown. Each of them carries the hopes and dreams of their clans, and through this ritual, they will become fully integrated into our society." Marcus felt a wave of emotion wash over him as he looked at the young women. They were so serene, so composed, and yet he could see the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes, the same uncertainty that gnawed at him. This was a momentous occasion for them, one that would shape their futures and the future of their people, and now he was a part of it. Arinya stepped forward and introduced each of the young women, giving their names and the clans they represented. There was a Lyra of the clan of the Sun, with her fiery red hair and determined expression, Nyx of the clan of Shadows, her dark eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that belied her age, Lyra of the clan of Stars, whose delicate features and gentle demeanor spoke of a quiet strength, and several others, each unique in their own way. As Marcus was introduced to each of them, he felt a connection forming, a sense of shared purpose that transcended the vast differences between their species. These were not just participants in a ritual, they were individuals with hopes, fears, and dreams, just like him. "We will begin the preparations tomorrow," Arinya said, breaking the silence. "There is much to do, and you will need to be ready, both physically and mentally. But for now, take some time to rest and reflect. You will need your strength for what lies ahead." Marcus nodded, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and anticipation. The reality of the situation was still sinking in, but he knew that there was no turning back now. He had made his decision, and whatever the future held, he would face it head-on. As Arinia led him out of the chamber and back through the winding halls of the sanctum, Marcus couldn't help but glance back at the young Illyrian females, who were once again deep in concentration. They were the future of their people, and in a way, so was he. The path before him was uncertain, filled with challenges and mysteries that he could barely comprehend, but it was also a path of discovery, of growth, and of a deeper understanding of what it meant to be part of something greater than oneself. And as he stepped out into the cool night air of Villiacen, with the twin moons casting their silver light across the city, Marcus knew that whatever happened next, he was ready to face it. The dawn of Illyria broke gently, with the light of the twin suns filtering through the thick canopy of the ancient trees that surrounded Villiacen. The city, ever in harmony with the rhythms of nature, stirred to life as the first rays of sunlight touched its living structures. The buildings, woven from the sinew of the world itself, seemed to hum in response, their surfaces glowing with a subtle warmth that mirrored the soft golden hues of the rising suns. It was in this tranquil, almost sacred atmosphere that Marcus awoke, his mind still clouded with the weight of the previous day's revelations. He had spent the night in a small but comfortable room within the sanctum of the ancestors. The bed, made from a material that felt like a cross between silk and moss, had offered him a surprisingly restful sleep, despite the turmoil in his heart. As he opened his eyes to the filtered sunlight streaming through the semi-transparent walls, Marcus knew that today would mark the beginning of his transformation, whatever that might entail. A soft chime echoed through the room, signaling that someone was at the door. Marcus rose, quickly dressed in the simple tunic and trousers that had been provided for him, and opened the door to find Priestess Arinia waiting, her serene expression unchanged from the day before. "Good morning, Captain Albright," she said with a slight bow of her head. "The suns have risen, and it is time for your preparations to begin." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and resolve. "I'm ready," he replied, though he wasn't entirely sure that he was. Arinia led him through the winding corridors of the sanctum, which were now alive with the sounds of Illyrian priestesses going about their daily rituals. The sanctum, which had seemed so imposing the day before, now felt like a place of peace, a refuge from the unknown challenges that lay ahead. The walls, still adorned with their intricate carvings, seemed to pulse with a life of their own, as if the very structure of the sanctum was breathing in rhythm with the planet itself. They arrived at a large, open courtyard at the center of the sanctum. The courtyard was a breathtaking sight, a lush garden filled with vibrant, exotic plants that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. In the center of the garden stood a large stone altar, surrounded by a ring of standing stones etched with ancient symbols. It was here, Arinia explained, that the preparations for the mating ceremony would take place. "The mating ceremony is not merely a physical act," Arinia began, her voice taking on a more formal tone. "It is a ritual of profound spiritual significance, one that requires both participants to be in perfect harmony with their surroundings and with each other. To achieve this state, we must first purify your mind, body, and spirit." Marcus listened intently, his attention fully focused on the priestess's words. He had come to understand that everything in Illyrian culture was deeply symbolic, with layers of meaning that often eluded outsiders. This ceremony, it seemed, was no different. Arinia gestured to the altar, where several other priestesses were gathered, their hands moving gracefully as they prepared a variety of ritual items. There were bowls filled with shimmering liquids, bundles of fragrant herbs, and intricate talismans made from materials that Marcus could not identify. Each item, he was told, played a crucial role in the purification process. First, Arinia said, "You must undergo the ritual of Alazar, the cleansing of the body. This is essential to rid yourself of any impurities and to attune your physical form to the energies of Illyria." She led him to a small pool at the edge of the garden, where the water shimmered with an almost iridescent glow. The pool was fed by a small waterfall, the water cascading over smooth stones before collecting in the basin below. The air around the pool was thick with the scent of fresh herbs and flowers, and Marcus felt an immediate sense of calm as he approached the water. "Disrobe and enter the pool," Arinia instructed gently. "The waters of Alazar are sacred, drawn from the heart of our planet. They will cleanse you of all that you carry from your world, preparing you for the journey ahead." Marcus hesitated for a moment, But then, with a deep breath, he removed his clothing and stepped into the pool. The water was cool, but not cold, and as he submerged himself, he felt a strange, tingling sensation spread across his skin. It was as if the water was alive, its energies seeping into his very being. He closed his eyes, letting the sensation wash over him, and for a brief moment he felt a sense of connection with the world around him, a connection that was both alien and comforting. The priestesses began to chant softly, their voices blending with the sound of the waterfall, creating a soothing melody that resonated deep within Marcus's chest. As they chanted, Arinya approached the edge of the pool, holding a small vial filled with a glowing blue liquid. "This is sarin, the essence of our ancestors," she explained. "It is distilled from the flowers that grow only in the sacred grove, a place of great spiritual power. The sarin will bind you to Illyria, connecting you to our past, present, and future." With that, she poured a few drops of the liquid into the pool, and Marcus felt the water around him change. It became warmer, more vibrant, and the tingling sensation intensified. It was as if the water was infusing him with the very essence of Illyria, filling him with a strength and vitality that he had never felt before. When the chanting finally ceased, Arinya extended a hand to help Marcus out of the pool. As he stepped onto the stone ledge, he felt different, lighter, stronger, and somehow more in tune with the world around him. The air seemed crisper, the colors more vivid, and even the sounds of the garden seemed more distinct. "The cleansing is complete," Arinya said, her voice filled with a quiet reverence. "You are now attuned to Illyria, ready to begin the next phase of your preparation." Marcus was given a fresh set of robes to wear, simple, white garments that felt almost weightless against his skin. As he dressed, he noticed that the robes were adorned with subtle patterns, symbols that he had seen carved into the walls of the sanctum. They were protective sigils, Arinya explained, meant to safeguard him during the ceremony. Once he was dressed, Marcus was led back to the altar, where the next phase of the preparation awaited. This was the rite of Neris, a ritual designed to purify the mind and open it to the deeper spiritual truths that the ceremony would reveal. For this, he would need to drink a potion made from a combination of herbs and other natural substances, each chosen for its ability to enhance mental clarity and spiritual awareness. Arinya handed him a small cup filled with a thick green liquid. The potion had a strong, earthy scent with a hint of something floral. "This is Virus, the elixir of clarity," she explained. "It will cleanse your mind of distractions and open your consciousness to the flow of Illyria's energies." Marcus took the cup and hesitated only briefly before drinking the potion. The taste was bitter and strong, but as it slid down his throat, he felt an almost immediate effect. His thoughts, which had been a chaotic jumble since his arrival, began to calm. The constant hum of anxiety that had plagued him seemed to dissipate, replaced by a sense of focus and clarity that was both unfamiliar and welcome. "Now you must meditate," Arinya instructed. "Allow the virus to do its work. Focus on your breathing, and let your mind open to the presence of Illyria. You may experience visions, memories not your own, or feelings that seem foreign. Do not resist them. They are part of your journey." Marcus sat cross-legged on the ground, closing his eyes as he began to regulate his breathing. In and out, slow and steady, he drew the air into his lungs, letting it fill him with each breath. At first nothing happened, only the sound of the garden and the distant chants of the priestesses filled his senses. But as the minutes passed, he began to feel a change, a subtle shift in his perception. The sounds around him grew distant, as if muffled by a thick, invisible layer. His thoughts drifted, and images began to form behind his closed eyelids, vague at first, but gradually becoming clearer. He saw a vast landscape, unfamiliar yet somehow recognizable. Towering trees with silver leaves that glimmered in the sunlight, fields of flowers that seemed to pulse with their own light, and a sky painted with hues that no earthly sunrise could ever produce. And then, there were the memories. They came in flashes, brief and fragmented, but powerful nonetheless. He saw Illyrian faces, not just the ones he had met, but others, hundreds, perhaps thousands, spanning generations. He felt their emotions, their joys, their sorrows, their hopes and fears, each one like a wave washing over him. Some were comforting, others unsettling, but all were deeply, profoundly real. Among the memories, one stood out. It was a vision of the sacred grove, the place from which the sarin was drawn. He saw the ancient trees, their roots tangled and deep, and the flowers that grew in the grove's heart, their petals glowing with a light that seemed to come from the earth itself. In the center of the grove, a figure stood, a female Illyrian, tall and regal, with eyes that burned like the stars. She looked directly at him, her gaze piercing through the veil of the vision, and spoke a single word: remember. The vision faded, and Marcus found himself back in the courtyard, his heart pounding in his chest. His body was still, but his mind was racing, the images and emotions from the meditation still vivid in his consciousness. Arinya, who had been watching him closely, knelt beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have seen much," she said softly. "The memories of our ancestors are now a part of you, as they are a part of all Illyrians. This is the first step in your integration into our society." Marcus opened his eyes, meeting her gaze. "I saw the sacred grove," he said, his voice shaky. "And a woman. She spoke to me." Arinya nodded, her expression calm. "That was Lysara, the first matriarch of the clan of the moon. She is a powerful spirit, a guide for those who seek the truth of Illyria. What she told you is important. Hold on to it, for it will help you in the ceremony to come." Marcus nodded, still trying to process the significance of what he had experienced. He felt different, more connected to this place, to its people and their history. The fears and doubts that had plagued him were still there, but they were tempered by a newfound sense of purpose. He was no longer just an outsider, he was beginning to understand the depth of what it meant to be a part of Illyria. With the rites of Alazar and Neres complete, there was only one phase of preparation left: the rite of Aelith, the binding of spirit. This would take place at the sacred grove itself, under the light of the twin moons. It was the most important and most dangerous part of the preparation, for it would bind his spirit to those of the Illyrian females with whom he would share the mating ceremony. Arinya explained that the rite of Aelith was a ritual that had been performed for millennia, dating back to the earliest days of Illyrian civilization. It was a rite that connected the participants to the very soul of Illyria, allowing them to draw upon its energies and to share in its wisdom. It was a deeply personal and spiritual experience, one that could change a person forever. As the day wore on, Marcus was given time to rest and reflect on all that he had learned. The weight of what was to come pressed heavily on him, but he also felt a growing sense of acceptance. He had made the choice to see this through, and now he was committed to doing whatever it took to fulfill his role in the ceremony. As the suns began to set, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Arinya returned to escort Marcus to the sacred grove. The path to the grove wound through the heart of the ancient forest that surrounded Villiacen, the trees towering above them like silent guardians. The air was cool and fragrant, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the soft rustle of leaves. The light of the setting suns filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. The grove itself was a place of profound beauty and power. The trees here were older than any Marcus had seen before, their trunks wide and gnarled, their roots intertwining in complex patterns that seemed to pulse with life. In the center of the grove, the ground was covered with the glowing flowers that he had seen in his vision, their light casting an otherworldly glow across the clearing. The young Illyrian females were already there, standing in a circle around the central tree, their faces calm and serene. They wore the same white robes, now adorned with silver sashes that symbolized their readiness to transition into adulthood. Each of them carried a small, intricately carved wooden bowl filled with a thick, amber-colored liquid that Marcus recognized as sarin. Arinya led Marcus to the center of the circle, where a stone altar had been placed at the base of the central tree. The altar was covered with more of the glowing flowers, their light flickering gently in the evening breeze. "Now," Arinya said, her voice soft but commanding, "we begin the rite of Aelith." The priestesses began to chant, their voices rising and falling in a rhythmic pattern that seemed to resonate with the very earth beneath their feet. As they chanted, the young females stepped forward, each taking a turn to pour a small amount of the sarin onto the altar. The liquid seemed to absorb the light of the flowers, glowing even brighter as it pooled in the center of the stone. Arinya motioned for Marcus to step forward. He did so, feeling the weight of the ceremony pressing down on him. She handed him a small, ornate dagger, its blade etched with the same symbols that adorned the walls of the sanctum. "Use this to draw a drop of your blood," she instructed. "Place it in the sarin. This will bind your spirit to ours, and to the spirits of the ancestors who guide us." Marcus took the dagger, its weight heavy in his hand. He hesitated for only a moment before pressing the blade to his palm, wincing slightly as it broke the skin. A single drop of blood welled up and fell into the glowing liquid, causing it to shimmer and pulse with a new intensity. The chanting grew louder, more urgent, and Marcus felt a wave of energy wash over him. It was as if the entire grove was alive, its power focused on the ritual taking place at its heart. The young females stepped forward again, this time placing their hands on the altar, palms down, their fingers brushing the edge of the glowing sarin. Now Arinya said, her voice barely audible over the chanting, "Place your hand on the altar. Let the binding begin." Marcus did as she instructed, placing his hand next to the others. The moment his skin touched the stone, he felt a surge of energy rush through him. It was like nothing he had ever experienced, an overwhelming sensation of warmth and light, as if he were being enveloped by the very essence of the planet. The energy flowed through him, connecting him to the others in the circle, their spirits intertwining in a web of shared consciousness. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of the past, the present, and the future. He saw the history of Illyria, its triumphs and tragedies, its joys and sorrows. He felt the emotions of the young females, their hopes and fears, their excitement and trepidation as they faced this pivotal moment in their lives. And he felt his own spirit being drawn into the mix, becoming a part of something far greater than himself. The energy continued to build, rising to a crescendo as the chanting reached its peak. Marcus felt as if he were on the edge of a great abyss, teetering on the brink of something unknown and unknowable. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the energy subsided, leaving him feeling drained and exhilarated at the same time. The chanting stopped, and the grove fell silent. The young females stepped back from the altar, their faces glowing with an inner light that matched the flowers at their feet. Arinya approached Marcus, her expression one of deep reverence. "It is done," she said softly. "The binding is complete. You are now one with us, connected to Illyria in a way that cannot be undone." Marcus nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened. He felt different, changed in a way that he couldn't quite describe. The world around him seemed sharper, more vivid, and he felt a deep sense of connection to the young females, as if they were a part of him, and he a part of them. Arinya gestured for him to step away from the altar, and as he did, he noticed that the glowing flowers around the altar had dimmed, their light now a soft, gentle glow. The ritual was over, but its effects would linger, shaping the events to come. "The ceremony will take place tomorrow, under the light of the full moons," Arinya said as she led Marcus back through the grove. "You are ready, Captain. Whatever happens, remember that you are not alone. We are with you, now and always." As they made their way back to the sanctum, Marcus felt a sense of calm settle over him. The fears and doubts that had plagued him were still there, but they were overshadowed by a newfound sense of purpose and understanding. He had taken the first steps on a journey that would change him forever, and though the path ahead was still uncertain, he knew that he was ready to face it. The night sky above was clear, the twin moons casting their silver light across the landscape, illuminating the path before him. The sacred grove, the chanting of the priestesses, the binding of spirits, these were not just rituals, but profound experiences that had opened his mind to the deeper truths of Illyria. And as he looked up at the moons, their light reflecting in his eyes, Marcus knew that whatever lay ahead, he was no longer just a visitor on this world. He was now a part of Illyria, bound to its people, its history, and its future. The ceremony would be a test, not just of his strength and resolve, but of his ability to embrace the unknown, to accept the responsibilities that had been placed upon him, and to find his place in a world so different from his own. But for now, as he walked back to the sanctum, Marcus allowed himself a moment of peace, a brief respite from the weight of the world. The journey was just beginning, but he knew that he was ready for whatever the future held. The night air of Illyria was electric, charged with the anticipation that hung heavily over the sacred grove. The twin moons, full and radiant, bathed the landscape in a silver glow that seemed almost otherworldly. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the significance of the ritual that was about to unfold. Marcus Albright stood at the edge of the grove, his heart pounding in his chest as he stared at the ancient trees that loomed before him, their twisted trunks and sprawling branches casting long, eerie shadows across the ground. He was dressed in ceremonial garb that had been given to him earlier that evening, robes of dark, shimmering fabric that seemed to drink in the moonlight, adorned with symbols that represented the various clans of Illyria. The fabric was soft against his skin, almost like a second layer of flesh, and as he moved, it flowed around him with a fluidity that was both comforting and unnerving. The robes were more than just clothing, they were a symbol of his participation in the ceremony, a physical manifestation of his acceptance into Illyrian society. The young Illyrian females Illyra, Nyx, Lyra, and the others stood in a semicircle around the central altar, their faces serene and composed. They too were dressed in ceremonial robes, though theirs were white and silver, reflecting the light of the moons in a way that made them seem almost ethereal. Each of them held a small, intricately carved staff, a symbol of their role in the ritual and the readiness to embrace adulthood. Their expressions were unreadable, but Marcus could sense the mixture of emotions that roiled beneath the surface: anticipation, fear, excitement, and a deep sense of duty. The air was thick with the scent of flowers and incense, and the sound of the priestesses chanting filled the grove, their voices rising and falling in a haunting melody that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the planet. The chant was ancient, its words unintelligible to Marcus, but he could feel the power behind them, a power that seemed to flow through him and into the earth beneath his feet. The grove itself seemed alive, the trees swaying gently as if in response to the music, their leaves rustling in a rhythm that matched the beat of his heart. Priestess Erinia stood at the center of the semicircle, her presence commanding yet serene. She held a larger staff, its end shaped like a crescent moon, and as she raised it high above her head, the chanting reached a crescendo. The young Illyrian females stepped forward, their movements perfectly synchronized, and the ritual began. Tonight, Erinia intoned, her voice carrying above the chanting, we honor the right of continuity, the sacred bond that ties our past to our future, our ancestors to our descendants. We gather here to witness the joining of spirits, the merging of essences. As our young ones step into adulthood and embrace their roles as the guardians of our heritage. She turned to Marcus, her gaze piercing and intense. Captain Marcus Albright of Earth, you have been chosen to partake in this sacred ceremony, to share in the essence of our people, and to help restore the balance that was disrupted. Do you accept this responsibility? Marcus felt a lump form in his throat, but he forced himself to nod. I do, he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Then step forward, Erinia commanded, her tone both gentle and unyielding. Marcus took a deep breath and walked to the center of the semicircle, joining the young females around the altar. As he did, he could feel their eyes on him, their gazes filled with a mixture of curiosity and expectation. The chanting grew softer, more melodic, and the priestesses began to move around the grove, lighting small torches that had been placed at the base of each tree. The flames flickered to life, casting dancing shadows across the ground and adding to the surreal atmosphere of the night. The altar, made of smooth, polished stone, was covered in symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. At its center was a shallow bowl filled with the same glowing liquid sarin that Marcus had encountered during the rite of Aelith. The liquid pulsed gently, its light synchronized with the rhythm of the chanting, as if it were alive, a conduit for the spiritual energy that filled the grove. Erinia approached the altar and dipped her staff into the sarin, stirring it slowly. As she did, the liquid began to change color, shifting from blue to deep purple, then to a vibrant red. It was mesmerizing, and Marcus couldn't tear his eyes away from the transformation. The color seemed to reach out to him, drawing him in, and he felt a strange sensation in the pit of his stomach, an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The sarin has been blessed, Erinia announced, her voice filled with reverence. It carries the essence of our ancestors, their wisdom and their power. It will guide us in this ceremony, binding us together as one. She gestured for the young females to approach the altar, and one by one, they stepped forward, dipping their fingers into the sarin and tracing a line down the center of their foreheads. As they did, the liquid seemed to absorb into their skin, leaving a faint glow that marked them as participants in the ritual. Each of them performed the gesture with solemnity, their expressions calm and focused. When it was Marcus's turn, he hesitated for a moment, then reached out and dipped his fingers into the sarin. The liquid was cool to the touch, and as he drew a line down his forehead, he felt a tingling sensation spread through his body, a warmth that radiated from his core. It was as if the sarin was merging with his very essence, becoming a part of him in a way that was both physical and spiritual. With the marking complete, the chanting stopped, and the grove fell into an almost eerie silence. The only sounds were the crackling of the torches and the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze. The priestesses moved to the edge of the grove, forming a circle around the participants, their eyes closed in deep concentration. Erinia stepped back, her staff held firmly in both hands, and began to speak in a language that Marcus didn't understand. The words were melodic, flowing like a river, and as she spoke, the the air around them seemed to vibrate with energy. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being woven together by her words, binding the participants to the ritual and to each other. Suddenly the energy in the grove surged, and Marcus felt a powerful force pull at him, as if trying to draw him into the very earth beneath his feet. The young Illyrian females seemed to feel it too. Their eyes widened, their breaths quickened, but they remained rooted in place, their hands clasped together in a gesture of unity. Arinya's voice grew louder, more intense, and the symbols on the altar began to glow brighter, their light pulsing in time with her words. The sarin in the bowl bubbled and hissed, its colors shifting and swirling in a hypnotic dance. The energy around them reached a fever pitch, and Marcus felt his body tremble, his heart racing as if it were about to burst from his chest. And then, without warning, the energy exploded outward, filling the grove with a blinding light. Marcus was thrown to the ground, his senses overwhelmed by the sheer power of the ritual. He felt as if he were being torn apart, his spirit pulled in 1,000 different directions at once, and then, just as quickly, it stopped. The light faded, the energy subsided, and Marcus found himself lying on the ground, gasping for breath. The grove was silent once more, the torches flickering gently in the breeze. He slowly pushed himself up, his body aching, his mind reeling from the experience. He looked around and saw the young Illyrian females doing the same, their faces pale but determined. Arinya stood over them, her expression calm and composed. "The bond has been formed," she said, her voice filled with quiet authority. "The rite of continuity is complete. You are now bound to each other, and to Illyria, in a way that cannot be undone." Marcus struggled to his feet, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He could still feel the energy of the ritual coursing through him, a deep, primal force that seemed to have taken root in his very soul. He glanced at the young females and saw in their eyes the same realization that had dawned on him. They were no longer separate individuals, but a part of something far greater, something ancient and powerful. The priestesses approached, their faces serene, and began to tend to the participants, offering them cups of a warm, sweet liquid that helped to restore their strength. As Marcus drank, he felt his body relax, the tension of the ritual slowly ebbing away, replaced by a deep sense of peace. "You have done well," Captain Arinya said, her voice gentle as she placed a hand on his shoulder. "The ceremony was difficult, but you have proven your strength and your willingness to embrace our ways. You are now one of us, bound by the sacred bond that ties our people together." Marcus nodded, though his mind was still reeling from the intensity of the experience. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Now, you rest," Arinya replied, her smile warm and reassuring. "The bond is still new, fragile. It will take time for you to fully integrate with the others, to understand the depth of the connection you now share. But do not worry, we will guide you. This is only the beginning of your journey." The young Illyrian females gathered around him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and respect. Elira, with her fiery red hair and determined gaze, stepped forward and offered Marcus a hand. "We are bound together now," she said, her voice soft but firm. "We will face whatever comes next as one." Marcus took her hand, feeling a surge of warmth and connection as their fingers intertwined. He could feel the bond between them, a thread of energy that linked their souls in a way that was both intimate and unbreakable. The other females joined them, forming a circle around the altar, their hands clasped in a gesture of unity. For a moment they stood there in silence, the weight of the ritual settling over them like a heavy blanket. Then, one by one, they began to speak, their voices soft and hesitant at first, but growing stronger with each word. "I am Nyx, of the clan of Shadows," said the dark-eyed female who had stood at the edge of the circle. "I pledge to protect this bond, to honor it with all that I am." "I am Lyra, of the clan of Stars," said the gentle, silver-haired female. "I vow to guide us through the darkness, to seek the light even in the darkest of times." Each of the young females spoke in turn, offering their names, their clans, and their vows to the bond they had just formed. When it was Marcus's turn, he hesitated, unsure of what to say. But then he felt the strength of the bond, the connection that now tied him to these young women and to the very essence of Illyria, and the words came to him. "I am Marcus Albright, of Earth," he said, his voice steady. "I pledge to honor this bond, to protect it with all that I am, and to learn from it, so that I may better understand your people and your ways." The circle remained unbroken, their hands clasped tightly as the vows were spoken. The energy in the grove had shifted, no longer the wild, untamed force that had overwhelmed them during the ritual, but something calmer, more controlled. It was a reminder of the bond they now shared, a bond that would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. Arinya watched them with a proud smile, her eyes shining with approval. "The bond is strong," she said, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. "You have all proven yourselves worthy of this ritual. Now rest and recover. Tomorrow you will begin the next phase of your journey, and there is much to learn." The young females released their hold on each other and stepped back, their expressions filled with a mixture of relief and determination. They had passed the first test, but they knew that many more lay ahead. As they made their way back through the grove, Marcus felt a sense of calm settle over him. The fears and doubts that had plagued him before the ceremony were still there, but they were tempered by the bond he now shared with the young Illyrian females. He no longer felt like an outsider, an intruder in a world he couldn't understand. Instead, he felt like a part of something greater, something that transcended the boundaries of race and culture. The path back to the sanctum was illuminated by the light of the twin moons, their silver glow casting long shadows across the forest floor. The air was cool and crisp, filled with the scent of flowers and the distant sound of the priestesses chanting, now soft and soothing. As they reached the edge of the grove, Marcus paused and looked back at the ancient trees that had witnessed the ritual. They seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, as if acknowledging his presence. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just to the Illyrians for accepting him into their world, but to the planet itself for allowing him to be a part of its sacred traditions. "You have come far," Captain Arinya said as she joined him. "But your journey is just beginning. The bond you share with the others is a powerful one, but it will take time to fully understand its implications. Trust in the process and in yourself. You have the strength to see this through." Marcus nodded, feeling a sense of resolve settle over him. "I will," he said quietly. "Thank you, Arinya, for everything." She smiled, a warm, reassuring gesture that filled him with a sense of peace. "You are welcome, Captain. Now rest. Tomorrow is a new day, and there is much to do." They walked together back to the sanctum, the silence between them filled with the unspoken understanding that they had both crossed a threshold, one that would change their lives forever. As Marcus lay down to sleep that night, his mind was filled with images of the ceremony, of the bond he now shared with the young Illyrian females. He could feel their presence, a comforting warmth that enveloped him like a blanket, and he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would not face them alone. The light of the twin moons filtered through the semi-transparent walls of his room, casting soft, dappled patterns on the floor. The air was cool and fragrant, filled with the scent of the night-blooming flowers that surrounded the sanctum. As he drifted off to sleep, Marcus felt a sense of contentment, a deep, abiding peace that he had not felt since his arrival on Illyria. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and mysteries that he could barely comprehend, but for the first time, he felt truly ready to face it. The bond he had formed with the young Illyrian females was not just a symbol of their shared experience, but a promise to honor their traditions, to protect their world, and to learn from their wisdom. And as the night deepened and the twin moons rose higher in the sky, Marcus slept soundly, his dreams filled with the light of the stars and the warmth of the bond he now shared with the people of Illyria. The dawn on Illyria was a gentle embrace, the twin suns slowly rising above the horizon, casting a golden glow across the landscape. The night had been long and filled with dreams that danced on the edge of Marcus's consciousness, visions of ancient rituals, of the sacred grove, and of the young Illyrian females with whom he now shared a profound bond. As he opened his eyes, he was greeted by the soft light filtering through the walls of his room in the sanctum of the ancestors, and for a moment he simply lay there, absorbing the tranquility of the morning. But beneath the surface of that calm, a quiet turmoil stirred. The events of the previous night, the intensity of the mating ceremony, the power of the bond that had been forged still resonated deeply within him. He could feel it, a subtle but persistent presence at the edges of his mind, a connection that tied him to the Illyrians in a way that was both intimate and unsettling. It was as if a part of him had been altered, reshaped by the ritual, leaving him to grapple with the implications of this new reality. The door to his room slid open silently, and Arinya entered, her expression as serene as always. She moved with the grace that seemed innate to all Illyrians, her presence both calming and authoritative. "Good morning, Captain Albright," she greeted him, her voice soft. "I trust you slept well." Marcus sat up, his thoughts still swirling but his demeanor composed. As well as could be expected, he replied, managing a small smile. "I think I'm still processing everything that happened." "That is to be expected," Arenya said, nodding understandingly. "The bond you share with the others is still new, still forming. It will take time for you to fully understand its depth and meaning. But you need not face this journey alone. We are here to guide you." She gestured for him to rise, and Marcus swung his legs over the side of the bed, planting his feet firmly on the cool floor. The simple act of standing, of grounding himself, brought a sense of clarity to his thoughts, though the underlying current of the bond still pulsed gently in the back of his mind. "There is much to do today," Arenya continued. "The bond you have formed is a powerful one, but it must be nurtured, strengthened. You and the others will need to spend time together, to learn from each other, to deepen the connection that now ties you all." Marcus nodded, understanding the importance of what she was saying. The ceremony had been the beginning, but it was only the first step on a much longer path. There was still so much he didn't know, so much he needed to learn, not just about the Illyrians but about himself and the role he was now expected to play in their society. Arenya led him out of his room and through the winding corridors of the sanctum. The halls were quieter than usual, the soft hum of the building's organic structure, the only sound that accompanied their footsteps. As they walked, Marcus noticed subtle changes in his perception. Details that he might have overlooked before now stood out to him with a clarity that was almost startling. The way the walls seemed to pulse with a faint light, the intricate patterns that adorned every surface, even the scent of the air, filled with the fragrance of the flora that surrounded the sanctum. It was as if his senses had been heightened, tuned to the rhythms of Illyria in a way that he hadn't experienced before. They arrived at a large, open chamber that Marcus hadn't seen before. It was a place of gathering, filled with soft cushions and low tables, the walls adorned with more of the glowing flowers that seemed to be a constant presence in Illyrian life. The young females Elira, Nyx, Lyra, and the others were already there, seated in a loose circle, their expressions calm but tinged with curiosity as they saw Marcus enter. He could feel the bond between them, a subtle, almost imperceptible thread of energy that connected their minds and spirits. It was different from the overwhelming force he had felt during the ceremony, more subdued, more manageable, but it was there, a constant reminder of the experience they had shared. "Please join us," Elira said, gesturing to an empty cushion beside her. Marcus took his place in the circle, feeling a strange mixture of familiarity and awkwardness. These young women were no longer strangers to him, and yet, the bond they shared was still so new, so fragile. He could sense their emotions, an undercurrent of excitement, tempered by a hint of nervousness, and realized that they were feeling much the same as he was. Arenya took her place at the head of the circle, her presence both reassuring and commanding. "The bond you share is a powerful one," she began, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "But it is also a responsibility. You are now connected in a way that few outsiders ever are. This connection will guide you, protect you, but it will also challenge you. You must learn to understand it, to nurture it, if you are to truly become one with our people." She paused, letting her words sink in. The room was silent, each of the participants reflecting on the significance of what she was saying. "Today, you will begin to explore this bond," Arenya continued. "You will spend time together, not just as individuals, but as a collective. You will learn from each other, share your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences. Through this, the bond will grow stronger, deeper, and you will come to understand what it truly means to be part of Illyria." Marcus listened intently, his mind racing with questions. How did one explore a bond that was so intangible, so deeply rooted in the spiritual? How did one learn to navigate a connection that was at once personal and collective? Arenya seemed to sense his uncertainty, and she smiled gently. "You will find that the bond will guide you if you are open to it. It is not something that can be fully explained with words, but rather something that must be experienced, felt. Trust in it and in each other." With that, she rose gracefully to her feet. "I will leave you now to begin your journey together. Remember, the bond is a gift, but it is also a responsibility. Honor it, and it will honor you." She left the chamber, her steps silent on the soft floor, leaving Marcus and the young Illyrian females alone. For a moment, no one spoke, each of them seemingly lost in their own thoughts, unsure of how to begin. It was Nyx who broke the silence, her dark eyes thoughtful as she looked around the circle. "This is new for all of us," she said quietly. "We were prepared for the ceremony for the bond, but now that it's real, it's different. We're different." The others nodded in agreement, their expressions reflecting the same mixture of uncertainty and resolve. "We're connected now," Lyra added, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "I can feel it like a thread that ties us together. It's strange, but it's also comforting." Elera, always the most outspoken of the group, leaned forward, her fiery hair catching the light. "We have to figure this out together," she said, her tone firm. "We're a part of each other now, and we have a duty to make this bond work. For ourselves and for our people." Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for these young women. They had been raised in a society that valued tradition, that placed immense importance on the rituals that defined their lives, and yet they were facing something entirely new, something that even their elders could not fully understand. And despite their youth, they were approaching it with a level of maturity and determination that was truly impressive. "I think we should start by talking," Marcus suggested, his voice tentative but gaining strength as he spoke. "We've all gone through the same experience, but we're coming at it from different perspectives. Maybe if we share what we're feeling, what we're thinking, we can start to understand this bond a little better." The others nodded, and one by one, they began to speak, their voices hesitant at first, but growing more confident as they shared their thoughts. They spoke of the ceremony, of the overwhelming power of the ritual, and of the bond that had been forged between them. They spoke of their fears, their hopes, and their uncertainties about what the future might hold. As they talked, Marcus found himself opening up in a way that he hadn't expected. He spoke of his life on Earth, of his role as a soldier and a diplomat, and of the challenges he had faced in trying to understand and respect cultures that were so different from his own. He shared his feelings of doubt and confusion, his fear of the unknown, and his determination to honor the bond that had been thrust upon him. And as they listened to each other, something remarkable began to happen. The bond that had been so nebulous, so intangible, started to take shape in their minds. It was as if the act of sharing, of opening up to each other, was strengthening the connection between them, making it more real, more tangible. They began to understand that the bond was not just a spiritual connection, but a shared experience, a collective understanding that transcended their individual identities. It was a link that tied them to each other, and to the very essence of Illyria, in a way that was both profound and beautiful. Hours passed as they talked, the suns rising higher in the sky, casting warm light through the chamber's windows. The conversation flowed easily now, the initial awkwardness replaced by a sense of camaraderie, of shared purpose. They were no longer just individuals bound together by a ritual, they were a collective, a unit, each of them contributing to the strength of the bond they now shared. As the day wore on, they took breaks to eat and rest, but the conversation never truly stopped. They shared stories of their lives, their families, their hopes for the future. They laughed, they cried, and through it all, the bond between them grew stronger, deeper, until it was no longer something they had to think about, it was simply a part of who they were. By the time the suns began to set, casting long shadows across the chamber, Marcus felt a sense of contentment that he hadn't experienced in a long time. He knew that the journey was far from over, that there were still challenges ahead, but for the first time, he felt truly connected to the people of Illyria. He no longer felt like an outsider, a stranger in a foreign land. He was a part of them now, and they were a part of him. As the group prepared to leave the chamber, Illyria turned to Marcus, her expression serious but filled with a warmth that he hadn't seen before. "We're glad you're with us, Marcus," she said, her voice sincere. "This bond. It's not something we expected, but I think it's something we needed, and I think you're a part of that." Marcus smiled, feeling a swell of emotion in his chest. "I'm glad too," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I never expected any of this, but I'm starting to see that it's where I'm meant to be. Thank you, all of you." Nyx stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We're in this together now," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it as one." The others nodded in agreement, and for a moment they stood there in silence, letting the weight of their words settle over them. Finally, Arinya returned, her presence as calming as ever. "You have done well today," she said, her voice filled with quiet pride. "The bond between you is strong, and it will continue to grow as you spend more time together. But remember, This is only the beginning. There is still much to learn, much to experience. She led them out of the chamber and back through the sanctum, the soft light of the evening casting long shadows on the walls. As they walked, Marcus felt a sense of peace settle over him, a calm certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. When they reached the entrance to the sanctum, Arinia turned to face them, her expression serene. "Tomorrow you will begin your training," she said. "You will learn to harness the power of the bond, to use it to protect yourselves and each other. It will be difficult, but it is necessary if you are to fulfill your roles as guardians of our heritage." Marcus nodded, his resolve strengthening. He was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that he wasn't facing them alone. As they stepped outside, the cool evening air washed over them, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and the distant sound of the forest. The twin moons were just beginning to rise, their silver light casting a soft glow across the landscape. Marcus looked up at the moons, their light reflecting in his eyes, and felt a deep sense of connection to this world, to the people who had accepted him as one of their own. The bond they shared was more than just a ritual, it was a promise, a commitment to each other and to the future they would build together. And as the night deepened, and the stars began to appear in the sky, Marcus knew that whatever the future held, he was ready to face it. The bond he shared with the young Illyrian females was a source of strength, of unity, and it would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time since his arrival in Illyria, Marcus felt truly at peace, truly at home. And as he walked back to the sanctum with his new companions, he knew that the journey was just beginning, but that they would face it together, as one. The next morning arrived with a sense of purpose that permeated the air. The golden light of the twin suns streamed through the windows of the sanctum of the ancestors, casting a warm glow over the city of Valius Sen. The night had brought Marcus a restful sleep, his dreams filled not with the intensity of ritual or the weight of responsibility, but with a quiet assurance that he was on the right path. Today marked the beginning of a new phase in his journey, a day that would set the foundation for the alliance between Earth and Illyria. Marcus stood at the edge of the courtyard, watching the sun's rays illuminate the vibrant flowers and ancient trees that made up the sanctum's garden. The tranquility of the scene was a stark contrast to the weight of the responsibilities that awaited him, yet he felt a calm resolve within himself. The bond he had formed with the young Illyrian females Elira, Nyx, Lyra, and the others was not just a spiritual connection, it was a partnership, a commitment to each other and to the future of their people. Priestess Arinia approached quietly, her presence as calming as ever. "Good morning, Captain Albright," she greeted, her voice carrying the serenity of the dawn. "Today we begin your training in earnest. You have bonded with the others, but now you must learn to use that bond, to harness its power and potential." Marcus turned to her, his expression serious but eager. "I'm ready," he replied, his voice filled with determination. "What do we need to do?" Arinia smiled, a gentle expression that conveyed both approval and understanding. "We will start with the basics, understanding the nature of the bond, learning to sense its presence and use it to communicate without words. From there we will move on to more advanced techniques, but all of this will take time. Patience is key." She gestured for him to follow her, and together they made their way to a secluded part of the sanctum, where the young Illyrian females were already gathered. The area was a small, open space surrounded by trees, their branches forming a natural canopy that filtered the sunlight into soft beams of light. It was a place of peace and reflection, a perfect setting for the training they were about to undertake. Elira, Nyx, and Lyra stood together, their expressions a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Marcus could feel the bond between them, a subtle pulse of energy that connected their spirits, but he still struggled to fully comprehend its potential. Arinia stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the group. "The bond you share is more than just a connection of minds, it is a link that ties your very essences together. Through this bond, you can communicate, sense each other's emotions, and even share in each other's experiences. But like any skill, it must be developed, honed." She turned to Marcus, her eyes serious. "Captain, you are new to this bond, but you must learn to trust it, to let it guide you. Start by focusing on your connection to the others. Close your eyes and try to sense their presence, not just physically, but spiritually. Feel the bond between you and let it lead you." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding in his chest as he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of birds faded into the background as he turned his focus inward. He could feel the others around him, their presence like a warm, comforting light at the edges of his awareness. But the bond itself was still elusive, a faint thread that he struggled to grasp. He took another deep breath, clearing his mind of distractions, and reached out with his thoughts, trying to find the connection that tied them together. At first there was nothing, just the emptiness of his own mind, the silence that stretched on endlessly. But then, slowly he began to sense something, a faint pulse of energy that seemed to resonate with his heartbeat. The bond was there, faint but growing stronger as he focused on it. He could feel the presence of Elira, her fiery determination like a beacon in the darkness. Nyx was there too, her calm, steady energy providing a sense of stability. And then there was Lyra, her gentle spirit like a soft breeze, comforting and reassuring. Marcus's breath hitched as the connection deepened, the bond becoming more tangible, more real. He could sense their emotions now, their thoughts brushing against his own like whispers in the wind. They were not just beside him, they were a part of him, and he was a part of them. He opened his eyes, and the world snapped back into focus. The trees, the sunlight, the sounds of the forest, all were still there, but now they were overlaid with a new awareness, a deeper understanding of the connection he shared with the others. Arenya smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "Well done, Captain. You are beginning to understand the nature of the bond. It is not something you can force or control. It is a living connection, one that grows and changes with time. Trust in it, and it will guide you." Marcus nodded, his heart still pounding but filled with a sense of accomplishment. The bond was more than he had ever imagined, and he was only just beginning to scratch the surface of its potential. The training continued throughout the day, with Arenya guiding them through various exercises designed to strengthen the bond and deepen their connection. They practiced sensing each other's emotions, communicating without words, and even sharing memories through the bond. It was exhausting work, both mentally and physically, but with each exercise, Marcus felt the bond grow stronger, more vibrant. By the time the suns began to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Marcus was exhausted but exhilarated. The bond he shared with the young Illyrian females was no longer just a concept, it was a living, breathing connection, one that he could feel in every fiber of his being. As they gathered around a small fire that had been lit to ward off the evening chill, Arenya spoke again, her voice calm but serious. "You have all done well today, but this is only the beginning. The bond will continue to grow and evolve, and so must you. There will be challenges ahead, both from within and from the outside world, but if you trust in each other and in the bond that ties you together, you will overcome them." Marcus looked around the circle at the faces of his companions, Elira, with her fierce determination, Nyx, with her calm, steady presence, Lyra, with her gentle spirit. They were no longer just individuals, they were a unit, a collective bound by a connection that transcended physical and spiritual boundaries. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Marcus felt a sense of peace settle over him. The bond had given him a new purpose, a new understanding of his place in the universe. He was no longer just a soldier or a diplomat, he was a part of something greater, something ancient and powerful. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the air crisp and filled with the scent of dew-covered flowers. Today was a day of action, a day that would solidify the alliance between Earth and Illyria, a day that would determine the future of both their worlds. Marcus and the young Illyrian female stood at the edge of the city, their expressions serious but filled with resolve. The training had given them a new sense of purpose, a new understanding of the bond that tied them together. Now, they were ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The Illyrian Council of Matriarchs had convened a special meeting to discuss the future of their alliance with Earth, and Marcus knew that this was a pivotal moment. The bond he shared with the young Illyrians was not just a personal connection, it was a symbol of the potential for unity and cooperation between their two species. If they could demonstrate the strength of that bond, the matriarchs would be more likely to embrace the alliance and move forward with their plans for collaboration. The chamber where the council met was a grand, circular room with high, vaulted ceilings and walls adorned with intricate carvings depicting the history of Illyria. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and the light of the twin suns filtered through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the stone floor. The matriarchs sat in a semicircle at the head of the chamber, their expressions calm but serious as they regarded Marcus and the young Illyrians. High Matriarch Lysara, her silver hair gleaming in the sunlight, spoke first. "Captain Marcus Albright, you have been welcomed into our society, and you have formed a bond with our young ones, a bond that few outsiders have ever experienced, she began, her voice measured and authoritative. Today we must determine the future of our relationship with your people. What do you have to say in support of this alliance? Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding but his resolve firm. He had spent his entire career navigating the complexities of diplomacy, but this moment felt different, more personal, more significant. The bond he shared with the young Illyrians gave him strength, a sense of purpose that transcended mere words. High Matriarch Lysara, esteemed members of the council, Marcus began, his voice steady. I stand before you today not just as a representative of Earth, but as a member of your society, bound by the same traditions and responsibilities that guide your people. The bond that I share with these young Illyrians is a testament to the potential for unity between our worlds. It is a bond that has given me a deeper understanding of your culture, your values, and your way of life. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. This bond is more than just a spiritual connection, it is a symbol of the strength and resilience of your people. It is a promise that we can work together, learn from each other, and build a future that honors the traditions of Illyria while embracing the possibilities that come from collaboration with Earth. The matriarchs listened intently, their expressions unreadable, but Marcus could sense the weight of his words. The bond pulsed gently in the back of his mind, a reminder of the connection he shared with the young Illyrians who stood beside him, their presence a source of strength and support. Elira stepped forward, her fiery hair catching the light as she spoke. We have all felt the power of this bond, she said, her voice filled with conviction. It has changed us, brought us closer together, and shown us that we are stronger as a collective than we are as individuals. Captain Albright has embraced our traditions, our way of life, and he has shown us that the alliance with Earth is not something to be feared, but something to be welcomed. Nyx nodded, her calm, steady presence grounding the group. The bond has given us a new perspective, a new understanding of what it means to be Illyrian. We are no longer just members of our clans, we are part of something greater, something that transcends the boundaries of our world. This alliance is a chance for us to grow, to learn, and to build a future that honors our past while embracing the possibilities of the future. Lyra spoke last, her voice soft but filled with emotion. The bond has shown us that we are not alone, that we are connected to each other and to the world around us in ways we never imagined. This alliance is an opportunity to share that connection with others, to build bridges between our worlds and create a future that is guided by the wisdom of our ancestors and the potential of our shared experiences. The chamber was silent for a moment, the weight of their words hanging in the air. The matriarchs exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful as they considered the implications of what had been said. Finally, High Matriarch Lysara spoke, her voice filled with a quiet authority. You have all spoken with conviction, and your words carry the weight of the bond you share. It is clear that this bond has given you a new understanding of our people and our traditions. And it is equally clear that it has the potential to guide us into a future that honors our past while embracing the possibilities of the present. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the group before continuing. The alliance with Earth is a significant step, one that must be undertaken with caution and care. But it is also a step that has the potential to bring great benefit to our people, to strengthen our society, and to ensure the continuation of our traditions in a rapidly changing world. The other matriarchs nodded in agreement, their expressions reflecting a shared sense of purpose. We will proceed with the alliance, Lysara announced, her voice filled with resolve. But it will be a partnership, one that requires mutual respect, understanding, and a commitment to honoring the traditions that have guided our people for generations. The bond you share will be the foundation of this partnership, a symbol of the strength and unity that we can achieve together. A sense of relief and triumph washed over Marcus as he heard her words. The bond had not only brought them closer together but had also paved the way for a future where Earth and Illyria could work side by side, learning from each other and building a shared destiny. As the meeting adjourned and the matriarchs left the chamber, Marcus stood with Elira, Nyx, and Lyra, their expressions a mix of relief and determination. The decision had been made, but the work was far from over. The alliance was only the beginning, a foundation upon which they would build a future that honored the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. Arinya approached them, her expression serene but filled with pride. You have done well today, she said, her voice warm. The bond you share has guided you to this moment, and it will continue to guide you as you move forward. The path ahead will not be easy, but with trust in each other and in the bond, you will overcome any challenge." Marcus nodded, his resolve strengthening. He knew that there would be challenges, that the path ahead would be filled with obstacles, but he also knew that they would face them together, as one. As they stepped out of the chamber and into the bright light of the twin suns, Marcus felt a sense of peace settle over him. The bond had given him a new purpose, a new understanding of his place in the universe. He was no longer just a soldier or a diplomat, he was a part of something greater, something ancient and powerful. And as they walked through the city of Villiers, their bond guiding them forward, Marcus knew that they were on the right path, a path that would lead to a future where Earth and Illyria stood side by side, united in their shared commitment to honor the past while embracing the future. The alliance was not just a political agreement, it was a promise, a commitment to each other and to the future they would build together. And as the twin suns rose higher in the sky, casting their light over the city, Marcus knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as one. For the first time since his arrival on Illyria, Marcus felt truly at peace, truly at home. And as he walked with his companions, he knew that the journey was just beginning, but that they would face it together as one.